She pedaled fast, her worn-out sneakers pressing against the bike pedals, heart pounding as she raced against time. The job interview was her only shot at changing her life, but fate had other plans. As she stopped at a red light, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up beside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a man in a tailored suit, his piercing gaze locked onto her. Seconds later, his next words would change everything. She had no idea her life was about to take a turn no one saw coming. Before we start, like this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. Now let's begin. The morning air was crisp as she pedaled through the quiet streets, her hands gripping the handlebars tightly. Her bike was old, the chain squeaked slightly with each turn of the pedals. But she did not care. She had exactly 25 minutes to reach the company's headquarters, and she could not afford to be late. Her heart pounded, both from exertion and nervous anticipation. This interview was her chance, her one opportunity to change everything. She had spent nights preparing, practicing answers in front of the mirror, imagining herself sitting in the chair across from the interviewer. She needed this job more than anything. Rent was due and groceries were running low. If she failed today, she had no backup plan. As she reached an intersection, the traffic light turned red, forcing her to stop. She tapped her foot impatiently, breathing heavily. It was then that she noticed the car beside her, a sleek black Rolls-Royce, its polished surface gleaming under the sunlight. The window rolled down smoothly, and she felt a pair of eyes on her. She turned her head, meeting the gaze of a man in his early 30s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit. His dark hair was neatly styled, his strong jawline set with quiet authority. He looked at her as if he had never seen anyone like her before. She quickly averted her gaze, feeling self-conscious in her simple blouse and skirt. She knew she did not look like someone who belonged next to a car like that. The light turned green, and she pushed forward, forcing herself to focus. She had no time for distractions, but as she sped toward the towering glass building ahead, she could not shake the feeling that she was still being watched. She arrived at the entrance, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she locked her bike outside. She smoothed down her clothes, wiped the light sheen of sweat from her forehead, and took a deep breath. As she stepped inside, she was unaware that the man in the Rolls-Royce had just parked his car across the street, his eyes still following her every move. She stepped inside the towering glass building, her heart pounding as she took in the grand lobby. The marble floors gleamed under the bright lights, and the air smelled of expensive cologne and fresh coffee. She suddenly felt small, her simple outfit a stark contrast to the elegantly dressed employees walking past her. But she straightened her shoulders, reminding herself why she was here. She had worked hard for this opportunity, and she would not let her nerves ruin it. Walking up to the receptionist, she cleared her throat. "I have an interview scheduled for 10 o'clock. The receptionist, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, barely glanced at her before tapping on her keyboard. "Name?" She gave her name, and the woman nodded. "Take the elevator to the 20th floor. Someone will meet you there." Muttering a quick thank you, she turned toward the sleek elevators. As she waited, she glanced at her reflection in the polished metal doors. She looked determined, but there was no denying the anxiety in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside and pressed the button. The ride up felt like forever. The higher she went, the more her nerves tightened. When the doors finally opened, she stepped into a quiet hallway lined with glass-walled offices. A woman in a navy blue suit approached her with a polite smile. "Follow me. The director will see you now." Her stomach twisted. This was it. She was led into a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Sitting behind a massive wooden desk was a man she recognized instantly. The same man from the Rolls-Royce. Her breath caught in her throat. What was he doing here? He leaned forward slightly, his piercing gaze locking onto hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "It is nice to finally meet you," he said, his voice smooth yet unreadable. She tried to mask her shock, but her mind raced. Why was he acting as if he had been expecting her? Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag as she struggled to steady her breathing. She had walked into this office, expecting to meet a hiring manager, maybe a panel of executives, but not him, the same man who had watched her at the traffic light, the same piercing eyes that had locked onto hers through the window of a car that probably cost more than everything she had ever owned combined. Now he sat before her, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. She could not afford to lose focus. This interview mattered more than whatever strange coincidence had just unfolded. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She hesitated for only a second before lowering herself into the plush leather seat. Her back was straight, hands resting carefully in her lap, determined to appear as professional as possible. "You must be wondering why I am the one conducting this interview," he continued, his voice smooth, calculated. She nodded slowly. "I was expecting someone else." His lips curled slightly, almost as if he was amused by her honesty. "I like to take a personal interest in certain candidates." Certain candidates. The words hung in the air, thick with meaning she could not quite grasp. "I have reviewed your application," he said, flipping open a folder on his desk. "Your background is impressive. High grades, strong recommendations, but little experience in corporate environments." Her stomach clenched. She knew that was her weakest point. She had done everything right academically, but real-world experience was a luxury she had not been able to afford. "I learn fast," she said quickly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. He studied her for a long moment, fingers steepled together. "I do not doubt that." Her heart pounded as silence stretched between them. She could not tell what he was thinking, and that unnerved her. But what he said next shook her even more. "Tell me," he said, leaning slightly forward, "why did you not take a taxi or a bus today?" Her breath caught. Of all the things he could have asked, she had not expected that. Her pulse quickened. She had prepared for questions about her qualifications, her work ethic, even her future goals. But this? Why did it matter how she had arrived? She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I could not afford a taxi," she admitted, her voice steady despite the vulnerability of the statement, "and the bus schedule would have made me late. I did not want to risk that, so I took my bike." His expression did not change, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of interest, of calculation. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping against the surface of his desk. "Interesting," he murmured. A strange tension filled the room. She felt as though she were being studied, her every move analyzed. She wanted to ask why this mattered, why he seemed so intrigued by such a simple choice. But before she could, he spoke again. "I admire that," he said. "Many people would have made excuses. They would have blamed the system, circumstances, anything but themselves. But you found a way, even if it was difficult." She held his gaze, unsure of what to say. Was this a test? Some sort of mind game? "I do not make excuses," she finally said. "I just do what I have to do." His lips curved slightly, the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. He tapped the folder in front of him. "That is exactly what I was hoping to hear." Her breath caught. Was this a good sign? Was she impressing him? She could not tell. "You know," he continued, glancing at her resume again, "this company does not just look for intelligence or qualifications. We look for resilience. People who do not crumble under pressure, who adapt, who find solutions when the odds are against them." She nodded, still unsure where this was leading. "Tell me," he said, his gaze sharp, unwavering, "if I offered you something bigger than this job, would you take it?" Her stomach flipped. "Bigger," she echoed. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward. "An opportunity that could change your life." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. The weight of his words settled over her like a thick fog. She had come here expecting a job interview, a simple conversation about her skills and experience. But this was something entirely different. An opportunity that could change her life? What did that even mean? She swallowed hard, her hands gripping the arms of the chair to steady herself. "I do not understand," she admitted. "What kind of opportunity?" He studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then, with a slow exhale, he leaned back in his chair, folding his hands together. "I have met countless people in my career," he said. "Graduates from the best universities, people with perfect resumes. But do you know what most of them lack?" She shook her head, unsure if he expected an answer. "Drive," he said. "Real, relentless drive. They crumble under pressure, or they wait for someone to hand them a solution. But you rode a bike across the city to get here. That tells me something important. You do not wait for opportunities. You create them. A strange mix of emotions swirled inside her. Was he really saying that something as simple as riding her bike had impressed him this much? It was not a choice she had made to prove anything. It was simply necessity. But now it felt like it meant something more. I appreciate that, she said carefully. But I still do not know what you are offering. He smiled then, a real smile this time. I want to mentor you, he said, not just for this job, but for something bigger, something that could put you in a position to change your future in ways you never imagined. Her breath caught. Why me? Because I trust my instincts, he said, and my instincts are telling me you are different. You have something most people do not, and if you are willing to take a risk, I am willing to help you build something extraordinary. The air between them crackled with tension. She felt as though she were standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at something vast and unknown, a future she had never dared to dream about. Tell me, he continued, his voice quiet but firm, are you ready to take that leap? Her mind spun, trying to grasp the magnitude of what he was saying. A moment ago, she had been nothing more than a hopeful job applicant, sitting nervously in a grand office, expecting the usual set of questions about her qualifications. But now the conversation had taken a turn she never could have anticipated. She had been offered not just a job, but a chance to completely change her life. Yet the weight of it all felt almost too much to bear. I do not know what to say, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You do not have to say anything yet, he said, but I need to know if you are ready to work harder than you ever have before. This will not be easy. It will push you beyond what you think you are capable of. A lump formed in her throat. She thought of the countless nights she had stayed up, studying under dim lights, pushing through exhaustion just to get closer to her dreams. She had never had anything handed to her. And now she was being offered a shortcut. Was it really a shortcut, though? Or just another path that required the same level of grit and determination she had always relied on? What exactly would I be doing? She asked. For now, you will start by working closely with me, he said. I want to see how you handle real-world situations, how you think under pressure. And if you prove yourself, I will open doors for you that most people spend a lifetime knocking on. The way he spoke, the certainty in his voice, it stirred something inside her. This was not a man who wasted time on empty promises. He had no reason to offer her this unless he truly saw something in her. She took a deep breath. I am not afraid of hard work, she said. I just need to know that this is real, that it is not some test or game. His expression softened as if he understood exactly what she meant. I do not play games, he said, and I do not waste my time on people who are not serious. If you accept, I expect you to give it everything you have. If you are not ready, I will not hold it against you. But this opportunity will not come again. Her heart pounded. She thought of all the moments in her life where she had wished for something like this. Just one person who saw her potential and was willing to give her a real shot. Now that it was right in front of her, could she really walk away? I want this, she said finally, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. I do not know where it will lead, but I am willing to find out. A slow smile spread across his face. Then let us begin, he said. Now start a lesson about the story. Life does not always give opportunities in the way we expect. Sometimes it tests us, pushes us to our limits, and forces us to prove how badly we want something. The difference between those who succeed and those who give up is not luck or privilege. It is the relentless determination to keep going, no matter how difficult the road gets. There will always be obstacles, moments of doubt, and times when it feels easier to quit. But those who achieve greatness are the ones who refuse to let their circumstances define them. They do not wait for the perfect moment, they create it. They do not complain about what they lack. They use what they have. The most successful people in life are not the ones who had everything handed to them. They are the ones who kept moving forward even when the odds were against them. Hard work will always beat talent when talent does not work hard. Struggles are not there to break you. They are there to shape you, to build resilience, and to prepare you for the success that is waiting ahead. Those who rise above challenges understand one thing. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is a stepping stone toward it. Every hardship is a lesson, every setback is a setup for a comeback, and every rejection is redirection towards something greater. The world belongs to those who refuse to accept defeat. So when life makes things difficult, when the journey seems too long, and when everything tells you to stop, remember why you started. Keep going, keep pushing, and one day you will look back and realize that every struggle was worth it. Because success is not just about reaching the top, it is about proving to yourself that you were strong enough to get there.